To me, I just have found that my people thrive better when I just take them off grains, and they thrive just as well without them. Yes, it's a tough mindset to get through because most of us are addicted to complex carbohydrates.
Okay, let's approach the grain subject from a different perspective. David, I'll give you the first one this time. If a person were to choose to consume a diet 100% of fruits and vegetables in what I will simply call a healthy balance in order to set that aside for the moment. In other words, consuming zero grain products, is that person likely to thrive?
Yes, very likely. Again, grains can be used therapeutically if they're sprouted because there's a lot of elements that can be increased, B vitamin content, etc. And I'm sure Brian can teach you all about those elements. In terms of a day-to-day lifestyle, again, it's very rare that someone is going to bring in grains regularly as part of their daily lifestyle. People have differences in metabolism, we know that. Some people who have a very protein-based metabolism includes a lot of sprouted grains for energy in their diet. For most of the people I know who are 100% raw or pretty close to it, who are thriving on live foods, generally do not include grains in their diet unless it's like holiday food like what we're having here. We had a great dish last night that Renee made with the sprouted manitoc rice. Oh, yeah. Now, I wanted to mention about that rice because, see, that's more of a natural type of grain. I mean, maybe it's not even a true grain, but it's closer to its wild state. When you start crossbreeding these things, whether it's potato or whether it's grain, the stuff gets lazy. It doesn't have to fight for survival anymore. Therefore, it gets a little starchy or glutenaceous. And therefore, when you cook that, then it becomes more sweet. You following that? Mm-hmm. And that's the complex carbohydrate problem that we're dealing with these days. We're dealing with complex carbohydrates in terms of corn products, which is also a grain, complex carbohydrate products made out of wheat, a grain obviously. Also potato, now that's not a grain, but that's another food. These are all very, very crossbred, hybridized foods that are far too sweet, have far too much sucrose in them for the body to even know what to do with. Far too much sucrose in them for the body to even know what to do with. Have far too much sucrose in them for the body to even know what to do with.
Brian, how about you? If a person chose, this is an average person, not a real sick person, just for the sake of the question, chose to set up a diet of 100% raw fruits and vegetables in, again, what I will call a healthy mix without addressing what that is, and zero grain, can that person thrive?
That's a very difficult question for me to answer. I mean, if you gave me an extremely healthy person, probably so. But that person's so rare that I don't get to see them in my work. And again, half the people I work with are healthy. So I would assume, I'd like to flip the question. When I wrote, with a buddy of mine, the Macrobiotic Whey book, which is one of Kushi's books, because 3.5 decades ago I joined all of this becoming a macrobiotic. The teaching was 60% of your diet should be grain. And from that, the science that came out of Harvard at that time showed us how wrong we were by giving an excessive amount of grains to people. Now, grant you, they were cooked grains, the type that Doug is talking about in his Grain Dead book. But the bottom line is, quite simply, that a lot of grains are also not what you want to do. Even in sprouted form, you don't want to do it. So I would say that for almost everyone that I've ever worked with, a small percentage of grain should be part of your diet. We do not suggest large percentages. And I do concur absolutely with Doug in saying that when you take it and grow it into a grass, it's really not a lot like the original grain. It becomes a mother plant again. And the mother plant's the green vegetable, basically, that's giving seeds away. So this is where you can use larger amounts by weight and in weight of grain without taking the grain that has to go through the digestion process, etc.
So just to be clear, that we understand you correctly, if we distinguish between the grain, quote unquote, in the form of the green, yes, and the grain in the form of the seed, if I understand you correctly, the seed form, even germinated, you would suggest in fairly small quantities Absolutely. In the diet. Absolutely. And David, you're agreeing with that. And of course, Doug, you're saying essentially none. So
none for a lot of people, I would say.
Yeah, so we're really not as far apart as some people might picture.
No, not at all.
This.
The exception to the rule is now and I understand and honor Doug and his experience with this, is I would put athletes on large amounts, bodybuilders. When I went and wanted to build my muscle mass, I used grains and beans to do it. I could not have done it on fruits. I could not have done it on fruits. I could not have done it on fruits.
Doug, you look like you want to re-enter the conversation here. Well, what about the comment that Brian just made about athletes?
Well, yeah, I'll comment on that, but...
I mean, you are an athlete, so you probably have something to contribute here, yeah.
I have plenty of athletes putting on plenty of muscle mass, but it's neither on fruits, grains, fats, vegetables, or anything else. They put on muscle mass by doing hard physical labor. And it doesn't matter what you eat, there is no food that causes you to gain muscle mass. So what you used as your source of fuel, fine. I mean, if that worked, that's fine. But I don't like to... This is a question that comes up a lot in my arena, is what do I eat to get bigger? And there's no food that you can eat that causes you to get bigger. If there was, then all those guys in the gym would be hanging out in kitchens and restaurants instead of in the gyms.
Well, they are. They are. In all due respect to you, Doug, I totally disagree with this. I've been going to gyms now for a quarter of a century. You're certainly much more of an athlete than I'll ever be in my life, and you can tell by that, the way you exercise and your commitment to exercise. But yes, how all of those people become big is through food. Have any of you ever not seen what these people who have incredibly large muscle mass eat in a day? Now, do we concur with the food they eat? The answer is no. But if you picked up Vegetarian Times, I believe from 1988, they did a cover story on vegan bodybuilders. And they had, at that point, the man who hadn't lost a competition in years, a Swede who had lived in California at that point, who had an incredibly large muscle mass. Now, for him to gain that muscle mass on anything other than large, astronomically large amounts of germinated grains, and probably it wasn't germinated grains, I'm putting words in his mouth, it was probably grains or beans, I will challenge you and say that that would literally be an impossibility. You would have to consume such a massive amount of fruits, or foods, not fruits only, you couldn't do it on fruits, foods, that it would be literally an impossibility. Now, grant you, look at how much you work out and look at your body size, and look at what you're eating. If you were eating grains, which, by the way, why they put weight on your body is they slow down one's metabolism. When you slow down a metabolism, what happens is that when you rip the muscle, and this is how you develop muscle mass, you rip the muscle and it rebuilds again. And so the metabolism has everything to do with that. So let's have a debate on this one.
Yeah, let's go a little bit. Because I think, if I understand you, and folks, I mean, even when we talk, this is with the highest degree of respect, and our differences of opinions is how we're going to learn as well. I think what you're saying is, I'm not big because I don't use the grains or the pulses. And I would respond by saying, I'm not big because I do fantastic amounts of cardio work, and I do everything in my possible nature to not get big. I try every way I can not to get big because I do long-distance events, and being big works against me. What I'm trying to do is stay the size I am, and which I've basically done over the last 20 years, and get stronger and stronger and stronger without getting bigger. This is a trick that I had to teach the U.S. diving team, because as they get stronger, they get bigger, they make a bigger hole in the water and a bigger splash, and they don't look like a Chinaman when he goes in the water and goes, Phoot! They go in and they look like a cannonball because their shoulders are so huge. And so teaching them how to train in such a way that they didn't get bigger was as much a part of the challenge as any other, and that part I'd like to
And I respect what you say, and I agree. I hope you didn't misunderstand what I said. It's not. You come from a gymnastic background. Now, I teach constantly the two real athletes we have in the world, and the strongest athlete we have in the world is a gymnast. I'm sure he's stronger than men that you see that are 5 times his size. That I'm positive of. There's no question. Look at what he does yogically, look at what he does lifting his own body weight, and that's real muscle development. And that's what they learned in gymnastics. So please, it wasn't of disrespect. It's of utter respect for you. It's utter respect to you. But what I'm saying is, if you happen to add more sprouted grains to your diet, you would have more muscle formation. more muscle development, and still achieve the same exact goals that you're trying to achieve at this point. And when I've worked with Olympic-level athletes, that's what I've tried to do, form muscle mass so that their immunological function develops at a greater degree, because the lymphatic system has everything to do with muscle mass development. And so you want more immune function, and that's what my objective is for healthy or unhealthy people.
Okay, let's give David a chance to jump in here. He's got the microphone up.
One thing I definitely want to say that is certain is that eating cooked grain over a long period of time as an athlete will definitely cause metabolic disorders. That's a fact. That's one thing. Another thing is when we're talking about seeds, even if they're sprouted, we still need to take in. Now, sprouted seeds are obviously more alkaline than non-sprouted seeds. However, they're not alkaline enough to be really considered an alkaline food until they've gone into the green leafy stage. Therefore, if someone's taking in a lot of sprouted seeds that have just been germinated for a couple days, you need to take in a lot of vegetables, green leafy vegetables in particular, to balance off that acid-alkali balance that I referred to on my talk on Monday, in that if you have a lot of seeds, you have to have a lot of leaves to create the acid-alkali balance. Every primitive person in every primitive culture knows that as a rule. Another thing is my partner Stephen Arlen in our business Nature's First Law is a very powerful man. He does not eat grains. He can bench press 135 pounds 100 times. That's a very difficult feat to do, extremely difficult. I'd say almost every professional football player cannot do that. And he does that mostly through eating a wide variety of vegetables, vegetable juice, olives as a main source of fat, some nuts, and some avocado. So that's possible, and he's done it, and he's demonstrated that.
Can I ask you his...
Hang on one second. Doug, since David brought up Steve Arlen, let's also... I know, Tim, you're probably in the room, but let's also, because you're very good friends with Tim Trader, and he clearly is somebody who's very powerful.
Can I ask you a question, though? Well, how old is your partner?
He's 31.
Okay. Well, there's hormonal differences, so let's preface that. This gentleman and I are the older generation here.
More than that.
Yeah, you are. You're 32. You're 32. Big difference.
I remember 31, though.
But, you know, we have, and you were, Tim, in a sense, Tim's teacher at a time, and he, like Stephen, is a very robust, physique, very strong in terms of muscle. You want to come up, Tim, for a minute?
Hey, here he comes. Give him a hand.
I knew Dr. Timothy Trader.
Hey, this is Dr. Timothy Trader from Florida.
I met Timothy Trader 10 years ago. He was a 99-pound weakling. No, he really wasn't. he wasn't, but he was nothing like this. He's put on a ton. How many pounds of muscle mass? Any idea?
Take the mic.
Right now I'm about 6 or 7% body fat. I weigh 150 pounds. Do the math.
So, Tim, if you stay with us for a second, do you use any grains in your diet in any form?
No, I don't.
I could not have done it on fruits.
I find that I don't need too much in that order. I need to have the energy and the stuff that does it. That's fruit to me.
Toi qui t'affole, c'est le pétrole qui fait qu'en toi ça déconne. T'es toujours à l'affût de quelques dollars. Pour toi la sécu c'est d'exploiter les smicards.